Bună seara, doamnelor și domnilor! Vă mulțumim că sunteți alături de noi. Ascultați Radio AVFM, Vocea Europei.
Jó estét, hölgyeim és uraim! Köszönjük figyelmüket! Önök az a AVFM Rádió Európa hangja műsorát hallgatják.
And, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. You are listening to A Voice for Men Radio, the voice of Europe. A Voice for Men is the flagship of the men's rights movement. And this show is probably the only one at this point addressing the issues concerning men and boys at a European level. If you ever thought that there's something wrong regarding the state's approach to men and their issues, this is the best place to start. This is the place where feminism gets to be called out on its lies and propaganda, and the state is invited to get out of people's lives. Please consider visiting avoiceformen.com and see how the truth in action sounds like. We are here and we don't plan on leaving anytime soon. And now, Lucian Balzan shall bring us on today's topic.
All right, we're back. Greetings, everyone. This is Lucian Vilsan, broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Herr Jon Gunnarsson, broadcasting from Deutschland, and our producer, James Huff. Hello there, everyone. Hi there, Jon.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine, especially after the conversation that we've had before going live. But, it made me forget that I'm suffering from a terrible headache, but... other than that, yeah, I'm doing just fine. How about you?
Yeah, things are mostly fine, and looking forward to the show. So I think we should just get started.
Yep, let's go start it. James, can you please play the jingle?
You are listening to AVFM Radio, the voice of Europe. This is the news.
Okay, the first one is from Switzerland, from 20 Minuten. It's called, "This decision is a slap in the face for all women." The Bundesrat's proposal for revising the pension system doesn't sit well with everyone. The left and the labor unions are especially opposed to the plans for increasing women's pension age to 65. Doris Bianchi, Central Secretary for the Schweizerischen Gewerkschaftsbund, SGB, that's the Swiss labor union sort of organization, comments, quote, "This decision is a slap in the face for all women. Women's pensions were already lower than those of men. Quote, the combination of worse pensions and a higher pension age is an outrage." What was especially problematic in this regard was that women over 60 were needed especially much by their social environment. In this regard, it was crucial for the AHV, which is the Swiss government's pension fund, to ease the burden on women. Women need a lower retirement age because they're burdened with many familial obligations, such as looking after their grandchildren or taking care of their elderly parents. The Bundesrat's proposal was designed to cut costs at women's expense. Also opposed to the proposal is Yvonne Ferry, president of the SP Frauen Schweiz, which is the women's organization of the Social Democratic Party. She says, quote, "As long as equal pay and compatibility of family and work aren't guaranteed in Switzerland, we cannot countenance such ideas." Now their goal is to mobilize women against the proposal. Quote, "On the 7th of March we will protest against wage inequality in Bern. Retirement age will also be an important topic there." End quote. In the end, one would have to let the people decide about the proposals. Quote, "We are prepared to accept the proposal, but only if equal pay is finally achieved," said Maya Graf, president of the Nationalrat and newly elected vice president of the women's organization Alliance F. Quote, "As long as it hasn't been achieved, women already start their careers at a disadvantage," she said, and announced an extensive debate of the topic for next year. Quote, "This problem must finally be solved." Martin Kaiser, a member of the Swiss Federation of Employers Senior Management, has a different opinion. Quote, "The proposed equalization is absolutely necessary," he says. "In the medium term, there would be a gaping hole in the AHV's finances. Given the higher life expectancy of women, there is urgent need for action," end quote. The SVP, which is a right-wing conservative party, criticizes the proposal for a different reason. Quote, "The department of the member of the Bundesrat Berset is pursuing an ideologically driven redistribution at the expense of the young and productive. Rising mountains of debt and subsequently massive tax hikes will be the result," the party writes in a press release. So, isn't it interesting how much these feminist groups are in favor of equality?
Yes, yes. Now, the rightist in there is correct in saying that it's a redistribution at the expense of the young and productive, but that has always been the point of a state pension system. I mean, where was the SVP when that thing was established in Switzerland, in the 80s, I think, because they established it quite late. So, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, basically the system is broke, as are most sort of these kind of systems around the world, and it needs urgently to be reformed because otherwise they just can't keep paying the pensions. So they have to do something. They have to cut back somewhere, and given that current the retirement age for men is 65 and for women it's 63, that is basically an obvious step. But what some of these people on the right are criticizing is that it just doesn't go far enough. They want even tougher reforms.
Yeah, well, I have a tougher reform, which is the one that was implemented in Poland and Romania, which is essentially ensure a very safe collapse on the midterm. And the younger the workers enter into the labor force, the more it counts their contributions towards private funds instead of state funds. That's a solution that I enjoy. Seriously, all this pension system is essentially, how do you call it, a Ponzi scheme, where the ones who come the latest are usually the ones who lose at most. And yeah, I mean, that would be what I would like to see. On the other hand, an equal retirement age between men and women, it seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, women already in Switzerland, they live up to have an average life expectancy of 80, whilst men have something like 77 or 75, something like that. So, I mean...
Yes. So basically, Swiss men are getting cheated twice. First of all, because they get the pensions later, and then they live shorter lives than average. So in a sort of a fair system, or in a sort of a private insurance system, they would actually get higher pensions because it is expected they won't live as long. But they don't get higher pensions if they paid in the same amount, and they get it for a shorter time, so they're doubly cheated.
Yes. Yes, and the feminists complain that, oh, but women's pensions are already lower. Yeah, well, part of the reason for why that is happening is because women can work less. I mean, when you retire 2 or 5 years earlier than men, well, of course you're going to get a smaller pension. Welcome to the reality.
Yeah, and also they just pay in less money, like even during those years that they work.
Yes, yes.
Because they just work less.
Yes.
Or work lower paying jobs. And no, it's not because of wage discrimination or anything like that, even though the feminists like to believe that. But we've I don't think we need to go into that myth once again.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, that's also one of mine. It's from the Daily Mail. But it is about Germany. It's called German politicians announce plans to introduce 50-50 quotas for traffic lights, so there are as many flashing green men as there are women. Gender equality with traffic lights is being pursued in Dortmund, with 50-50 quotas for male and female icons set to be introduced. Politicians from the Social Democratic and Green parties in a German city have asked the council to consider the idea. They've argued that some of the lights should be partially modified in the name of equality. The application said, quote, "Since we give equal treatment to men and women, it would be consistent to partially modify traffic light men to traffic light women," according to The Guardian. The plan is for extra flashing green women to be installed when traffic lights fall into disrepair to keep costs at a minimum. The plan's backers claim that a change would make crossing the road safer, as female icons, or Ampelfrauen, would emit more light to the skirt. One advantage of the traffic light woman would be the enlargement of the illuminated area, the Green and Social Democrats said in a statement. Other German cities such as Bremen, Cologne, Dresden, Kassel, Magdeburg and Zwickau already have female lights, but the introduction was barred in Berlin, with officials concerned that the design of a girl with pigtails was too cliched, The Guardian reported.
That's it. I don't have any other comments.
Now, I do have to give them credit for this argument with the with more light being emitted through the skirt, because that is actually sort of a rational argument that does not rest on dogma. I mean, I'm not sure how relevant it really is for safety or anything like that, but at least you have to give them credit for when you're actually having an argument.
Yeah, but still. But then again, if that is a correct argument, I suppose it is, then wouldn't it fall again on the reason why it was rejected in some portions of Berlin, because it's too cliched? I mean, damned if you do, damned if you don't. How do you win?
I mean, you do have to give them a skirt or something like that. Otherwise, how would you tell that it's a woman? I mean, if it's just if you just have a sort of stick figure representation of a woman wearing trousers, then you can't really tell her apart from a man.
They put tits in there.
At least I guess if you show her in profile, you can put some tits on her. Then,
or as another J says,
that's small tit shaming. Someone just don't have tits. I mean,
yeah.
Or as another J says, well, just make the icon of a very fat man. That would you get more light.
You have to do that, yeah.
And of course you can't. It's not like you could put genitalia on them.
Amazing. I mean, I don't know about Magdeburg or Zwickau. I've never been there, but I have been to Dresden and Köln and Bremen, and I'm pretty sure that I can identify out of the top of my head some bigger problems in those places, other than the fact that they don't have affirmative action for traffic lights to have gender equality in the fictional characters that are drawn on the traffic lights. I mean, come on!
Yeah.
Why don't they just do it as we used to do it on the old traffic lights, which is just put a very big green light and a very big red light, and that's pretty much solves the problem. And amazing.
Yeah.
And this is just make work discussion. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, why? And on top of the things that don't make any sense whatsoever, let's go to the next one from friatider.se. Pojkar blir prinsessor I new lekslagskatalog. Boys will be princesses in the new toy catalog. The latest gender-certified toy catalog from Toys R U, which is a toy chain in Sweden, includes boys who dress up as princesses. Under pressure from radical feminist advertising ombudsman, this year's toy catalog brings products that are more cultural Marxist than ever before. One of the toy chains that have gone furthest into the insanity is Toys R Us, who, for Christmas, among other things, markets itself with little boys who are dressed as shines and princesses. Leftist newspaper Aftonbladet writes that toy catalog is now hailed and refers to the number of left-wing people working in the media that describe the images as, you guessed it, progress. Now, why does the state have to be involved in this? That's my only question. I mean, if those toy chains would have chosen by themselves to promote such a thing, well, okay, fine, their money, their loss. But why does the state have to be involved in this? For starters, why does Sweden have an advertising ombudsman? I mean, seriously?
Yeah, actually just have to say that it's actually Toys R Us. It's an American brand, so...
it doesn't matter. I mean, they were pressured in Sweden to do that.
Yeah.
And why? I mean, why does the state have to be involved in such a trivial matter? I mean, it is a trivial matter how private toy chains get to market their toys. I think that's not the problem of the state.
Yeah, also, like, the idea that you need to have boys dressed as princesses in order to have to not be, I don't know, bigoted or something is just bizarre. I mean,
yeah.
Sure, maybe there are some boys who want to dress up as princesses, but they're a very small minority, and catering your advertising to the 1% of the population rather than 99% of the population doesn't really make any fucking sense.
Yeah, and besides, I mean, seriously, this is not a discussion that should be happening at the state level. At best, this discussion should be happening, I don't know, in the board of directors of private companies who maybe want to do that. I mean, I have no problem with private companies wanting by themselves to do that. I think it's wrong, but, well, their money, they get to invest them in whatever they want and market themselves however they want, and the marketplace will decide. But to have the state come in and say, I don't know, go ahead.
And the market is really good at catering to sort of small groups that are outside of the mainstream and who are not a majority. Markets are really good at developing products even that are only wanted by maybe 1% of the population or maybe even a much smaller part of the population. But still, if there's a profit to be done in selling goods that maybe only 1 in 1,000 people want to buy, then there can still be a good market in that, and don't need the state to come in there to tell people what to do.
Well, if we could only convince the state of Sweden about this fact, and especially if we could only convince them that they don't need an advertising ombudsman to boss around everyone on how to market their products, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's not that they need one, it's that they want to have one, because they want control over as many things as possible. They want to create as many jobs for their people and to exercise as much power as possible and to get as much money as possible.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, and the next one is that one, yes. Okay. The next article is from Julie Bindel, which is a TERF, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, that is. And she writes a huge column in The Guardian. I've cut as much as possible from it, and I'll probably cut even more as I read it. She goes like this: feminism is in danger of becoming toxic. Okay. The scientist of Rosetta Mission fame, Matt Taylor, is arguably better known at the moment for a shirt he wore depicting scantily clad women than his extraordinary scientific breakthrough. After a massive kerfuffle led by feminists, Taylor broke down in tears at a briefing recently and said, "I made a big mistake and I offended many people, and I'm very sorry about this." Many would hail this as a feminist victory, a big-name scientist apologizing on TV and being reduced to tears for his apparent sexism. We must have come a long way to wield so much influence. But there's another way of seeing it. As less of a victory, more of a sign of a shift in feminist tactics. Instead of attacking the root cause of women's inequality, we've moved towards the vilification of individuals. Jumping one paragraph, the US pickup artist Julian Blanc has been forced to leave Australia after receiving a barrage of criticism over his dating seminars. These suggested that men deploy tactics of harassment and abuse to attract women. Britain and Canada are also considering a ban. He is described as the most hated man in the world, but rather than using racist and sexist immigration laws to keep Blanc out of the country, we should be looking at using the criminal law against him. The petition to deny him a UK visa so far has more than 156,000 signatures. Would we get anything like so many signatures on a petition pressuring David Cameron to fund rape crisis centers or to close down Yarlswood, the immigration detention center for women that has been widely criticized for its treatment of vulnerable inmates? I bet not. In fact, the petition to close Yarlswood was set up earlier this year and has attracted fewer than 50,000 signatures. Right, so I guess the Yarlswood is the only place where immigrants are treated poorly in the UK. I mean, surely there are no men's centers similar. Oh, anyway.
No, of course not, of course not.
Back to the article. Feminism, a great social movement, is in danger of becoming toxic and repressive. Hint, it already is. The focus on individuals, however vile they may be, signifies a shift away from the more difficult long-term work of making institutions such as the Crown Prosecution Service and other governmental departments accountable. Justice for Women, a feminist campaigning group I co-founded, managed to change the law to prevent men claiming that nagging was a justifiable reason to kill female partners. Just a small parenthesis. Meanwhile, in Canada, nagging is a very legit way for women to kill their parents. I guess that's equality. But anyway, Southall Black Sisters successfully challenged Ealing Council when it proposed cutting women's services. The CPS, badged for decades by anti-FGM campaigners, ended up changing its policy and began to proactively seek prosecutions. Meanwhile, the group of doctors who wanted to include male genital mutilation in the same category were fucked in the ass by feminists. Anyway, feminists campaigned all through the 1970s and 80s to make rape in marriage a crime, and in 1992 the goal was achieved. Rather than spending so much energy piling on a man for wearing a sexist shirt, is it not better to focus on the manufacturer? Is Taylor's shirt really as problematic as an entire clothing label named Porn Star? Wait, what? Anyway, the current climate of McCarthyism within some segments of feminism and the left is so ingrained and toxic that there are active attempts to outlaw some views because they cause offense. Petitions against individuals appear to be a recent substitute for political action towards the root causes of misogyny and other social ills. Petitions have taken over politics. Ched Evans is the only Football League player who has been convicted of rape out of the many who have been accused, and yet feminist energy at the moment is being directed towards him as an individual rather than towards a criminal justice system that fails rape victims. It has been long known that there is endemic misogyny within football. What? Anyway, what are we doing about the culture within the sport that makes it okay for groups of men to use their power to lure young, impressionable women back to a hotel room and queue up to roast her? I want the FA to initiate a kick sexism out of football campaign. Yeah, good luck with that. I have absolutely no sympathy for Evans because he has refused to admit his guilt and shown no remorse whatsoever. But I would far rather be waging a war against the FA for its inaction against endemic sexism in the game. She keeps saying that word, endemics, and that expression, endemic sexism, but just saying it so it doesn't mean it's true. Anyway, the, quote, ban this sick filth, end quote, approach is starting to look more like censorship than progressive politics. Political protest and heated debate has been replaced with a witch hunt mentality. It would appear we have forgotten how to target institutions. The tactic du jour is to wind up a crowd and shut down any nuanced discussion or debate. Patriarchy is being left to its devices, while bad and unpalatable men are being taken to task one by one. Identity politics and the emergence of feminist preciousness, the tendency towards putting trigger warnings on everything and wrapping each other in cotton wool, has translated into a disproportionate focus on individuals who offend rather than the culture that allows them to do so. Wow. It is hugely important to hold abusive men to account, but we, feminist campaigners, have learned that the state allows men to perpetrate individual crimes and have therefore tended to focus on making root and branch change. Lately, we appear to have gone backwards. It is as though we have lost the strength and confidence to effectively challenge institutions. Moral superiority and call-out culture has trumped political activism. Feminists have a proud history of taking state institutions and corporations to tasks. It would seem this is being lost in a sea of vitriol. We built this movement on a desire and willingness to question and challenge old assumptions and truisms. We are in danger of becoming autocrats who would rather organize a pile-on than try to change systems. The lifeblood of feminism is in danger of becoming bile.
This is great.
It is. It's feminist infighting, and it's music to my ears. Seriously, I'm not joking.
Yeah. And the reason that feminists are no longer as much criticizing organizations and governments and so on is that they are basically part of running them. They are the organizations and the powerful institutions and so on. And they have created this sort of situation we are in now, at least in large part. So they can't very well criticize it too vigorously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and again, the funniest part of it is that this individual, again, is a bigot herself. I mean, even her fellow feminists believe that she's a bigot. So, this is so much fun. I mean, come on. Although, to be honest, her criticism of the so-called call-out culture is quite fair. I mean, yeah, it is. Her alternative is even worse, but that's a different story. But her criticism on that particular point is quite fair. I mean, I've never thought that I would be in agreement even with one line of Julie Bindel, but come on, this is fair.
Yeah, and I mean, Nazis were quite good when they were criticizing the Bolsheviks and vice versa, so...
Yeah, and I guess that's a fair point. Yeah. But no, I mean, what I am expecting is a bit more infighting in the next, in 2015, essentially. When they start turning against each other even more than they were doing so this year or in 2013, that's when we'll get to have a lot of fun. James, you're the visionary on this. Any words? I would give them another 2 years, guys. We need to give these guys another 2 years before we see them really turn on each other in big ways. Look, they have to fraction away because we are drawing moderates in our direction through reason and evidence. Okay? For some of these people who hold the label of feminist and who have drank the Kool-Aid, they've never had an opportunity to see our evidence. And once and it's going to take a couple more years for this to happen. Once they begin to reconcile this belief system that they have and objective reality, they're going to start moving in our direction, but they're going to try to carry the feminist brand with them. And that is going to cause a shitstorm. You're going to see a ton of people similar to Christina Hoff Sommers suddenly pop up. People who are going to want to carry the label with them, but begin moving toward a more evidence-based understanding of the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
we need, and you know that poses a whole new set of problems for us.
Of course it does.
Because at this point this is going to cause a problem for us in the future, because we're going to have to start weeding them out one by one. We're going to have to openly question the label itself, not just the belief system behind it, but in the same way that we often hear people say, well, Christina Hoff Sommers is a self-professed feminist, but she doesn't act like a feminist. We're going to see a lot more of that happen. And
that's because she's not.
I'm just saying. This is where we're headed. All of a sudden, it's going to be a very confusing time on both sides to be faced with that label. Someone says, I'm a feminist, and you're going to have to dig in order to find out, well, is this the type of individual who is carrying the label but is moving towards an evidence-based solutions to problems in the world, or is this one of the nut jobs that we've been dealing with for the last 50 years?
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. And seriously, I cannot agree more. And I'm already thinking how tough of a job will be to integrate all these new individuals. But we'll have time to discuss that more in other shows. Jon, next one.
Okay, so this begins the International Men's Day related part of the show, I guess. This is from the Morgenpost, a Berlin newspaper, and it's a piece called On International Men's Day. This is how Berlin's men are doing. And it starts like that. I'm just going to read the beginning. It's a long article and not all that interesting for our purposes. So here goes. Men are different. Quote, men are impatient, says Michael Mockney of the Men's Health Center in Berlin. They didn't like to go from one doctor to the next and to sit in waiting rooms. Thus it was often women who sent their men to the doctor's office. Quote, the woman is usually the family's Minister of Health, says Lothar Weisbach, who has built up the Men's Health Center. Doris Bardele of the Foundation for Men's Health in Berlin believes, quote, we need to find different ways of reaching men. Thus, 16 years ago, the 19th of November was declared International Men's Day. One of the goals, to pay more attention to the specific health problems of men. Far too many men drag their feet when it comes to preventative health care. They're overweight and they drink too much. Men in Berlin reach the age of 77.6 years on average, whereas women have a life expectancy of 82.6 years. Here are the 10 biggest health problems for men in Berlin. Then it goes into a list of various different areas, so basically where men are doing it wrong, about psychological health and prostate and alcohol and weight and various other kinds of things where basically men are doing things wrong, and the article points out what men are doing wrong and what they should do. And this to me is very interesting, because it is sort of illustrative to how men and women are seen in our society. That when here we have a genuine problem that everyone acknowledges that men have, and the reaction is to point out, here is what men are doing wrong. Here's what men can do better, and here's what men have to do to solve this problem that they have. Whereas if it's a situation where women have a problem, the focus is always on what does society do, or what can men do to help women, or what can the government do to help women. And sort of what can women do to help themselves is always very much de-emphasized. This sort of general infantilization of women, whereas men are always seen as being responsible for themselves and not needing or deserving any sort of help.
And more like individuals. When you said that, what society needs to do, I just remembered a passage that I've heard from Thomas Sowell with the society as a metaphor. It seems that every time women have a problem, the society as a metaphor trope comes into place, and suddenly there aren't individuals agents of decision. There are somehow collective agents of decision, as if everyone is controlling someone. Everyone is in control of the society, which is how do I put it? Not really correct.
Yeah, I mean, society is a result of human action, but not of human design, as Hayek put it. It is. Mm-hmm. It's not something that anyone is really at fault for. There's no one who plans how society will be. It's a product that emerges from the various individual actions of many people, and no one is really in control of society.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next one. Next one is also from you.
That's also from me. And it's from the Generalanzeiger Bonn. And it's called The Small But All-Important Difference. The extraordinary sense of subtle irony is perhaps the least appreciated characteristic of dedicated women's rights activists. A great injustice. It is quite something when the German Spitzenfrauenverbände, as they call themselves, wrote yesterday to the federal cabinet to demand that they decide today of all days on the women's quota for the upper levels of corporations. Today, on International Men's Day. Men's Day. What do men do on this day anyway? Of course, what men always do, or what feminists like to think men do. Sitting with their legs apart, patronizingly drinking to emancipation, and making a few jokes about the amusing excesses of gender politics. About Lan Hornscheid, for example, a female professor at the Humboldt University in Berlin who wants to be addressed as Professix. This gender-neutral form is supposed to emphasize that there's more than just men and women. Or about Kreuzberg, the city district of Berlin that has women's quotas for street names, which initially prevented the Jewish Museum from naming its courtyard after the Jewish philosopher Moses Mendelssohn. Now it's named after him and his wife Fromet. Kreuzberg? That's right. That's a district that introduced unisex toilets in their public buildings for the large number of people who previously couldn't decide in which of the hitherto existing offers to conduct their urgent business in. Can men laugh about that? Certainly. After all, men don't have much occasion for laughter otherwise when it comes to this topic. No federal agency without a women's quota, no university without a plan for women's advancement, no public debate without the politically correct relation to gender issues. Which brings us to the magic word, the open sesame for women looking for advancement. The magic formula is called gender mainstreaming. No one understands what it is, and that's perhaps not its worst feature. What is gender? And as a note, he uses actually the English word gender because that word doesn't actually exist in German. German has not yet invented a suitable word for this concept, which is perhaps for the better. So, what is gender? Anyone who wants their voice heard in this debate needs to know this. The central assumption of gender studies is the differentiation between sex and gender. Sex is the unfortunately undeniable difference in biological features between men and women. It is unimportant. A difference as significant as categorizing people according to their hair color or the length of their nose. The actual differences, on the other hand, are socially constructed, learned, and changeable. Men and women? Really just a convention, an agreement, an imposition. people have extraordinarily diverse sexual orientations, and oftentimes they change even within the same person. A fundamental constitutive difference between men and women doesn't exist. This is what gender theory teaches. And gender mainstreaming is the realization of this. Well, scientific theory into concrete policies. And Article 8 of the Lisbon Treaty establishes it in European law as a binding principle. It is a, quote, general guiding principle of governmental action, end quote, as an internet page of the Federal Ministry for Education says. In no part of society has the realization of gender mainstreaming been advanced more rapidly than in universities. There are now 215 professorships in German universities that are concerned with gender studies. 66 academic centers are dedicated to questions of gender. What are all these researchers doing? Hanoverian economics professor emeritus Günther Buchholz wanted to know just that. He studied the 2011 evaluation report of the Science Commission of Lower Saxony, which was supposed to investigate the gender projects done in Lower Saxony's universities. He was surprised by the result. Quote, "You don't learn what they're working on," Buchholz told our newspaper. Instead, the 80 pages were concerned with securing research funding even more efficiently. The 6-person committee of experts which conducted the evaluation consisted of 6 female scientists who were all themselves gender researchers. Buchholz, quote, "Gender studies, that's research by women, about women, for women." What also fits in with this picture, there are around 2,000 equality commissioners in Germany, with cities, municipalities, public administrations. In North Rhine-Westphalia, a man had sued against his application being rejected outright for not being a woman. The county court of Arnsberg upheld the rejection. Professor Buchholz then made a questionnaire of his own to find out how these professors see their work and what topics they are interested in. He wrote to all of them. None of them replied. The pedagogue Clemens Schlegel from Munich has been doing research on the topic of boys in school for a long time. Boys display behavioral problems more often than girls and are sent off to special needs schools far more frequently. How is that connected to gender theory? Schlegel, quote, "The dogma that boys are imitating bad role models is quite pernicious. Scientifically, this hasn't been defensible for a long time. But you're not allowed to say it out loud." Schlegel is a school pedagogue at the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. He's given many talks about the disadvantages that boys face. When he wanted to assemble a task force of experts, he ran into resistance. Quote, "They diverted the project. They wanted the topic to be expanded to shift the focus away from boys." And lastly, how much does gender mainstreaming cost anyway? We asked at the Ministry for Families. The official reply, gender mainstreaming was a cross-sectional task. Quote, "Thus, no ministry and no federal agency can spend money without taking into account this obligation. For this reason, it is practically impossible to calculate the share of the national budget." End quote.
In other words, it costs so much that we're actually afraid to tell you how much it costs because it might piss off pretty much everyone.
I think it's quite plausible that they really don't know how much it costs, but they don't really care.
Well, precisely because they don't know how much it... I mean, I don't know. Maybe they really don't know how much it costs. But because no agency whatsoever can spend money without taking into account this obligation, this means that a share of every single expense is somehow related to the topic, which means a fuck ton of money, even if you just calculated it as empirically, as, I don't know, 2% of every expense being made. Probably it's a little bit more, but I just pulled a number out of my big ass.
I don't actually think that it's 2%. I think it's probably less than that. But I mean, like 1% of the entire budget is like a huge pile of cash.
Yes.
And I don't think it's that much actually, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, overall, however, very, very good article, especially the portion where essentially they wanted to divert the project and expanded it to such an extent that it doesn't really make any sense whatsoever from its initial perspective.
Yeah, this is like one of the few actually good articles that came out on International Men's Day in Germany, and it's in a sort of like a regional newspaper that's not very big. I mean, before that I've never heard of the Generalanzeiger Bonn. I mean, it's not a newspaper that people know. So, I mean, you have to dig pretty deep to actually find something that is, actually worth reading and positive and so on about International Men's Day.
Okay. I'll go next. Let's do a little bit of a roundup. I mean, I'm not going to read all the links that I have gathered here for IMD related, but however, this one is quite interesting from feminfo.444.who. It's interesting, I'm going to tell you why. The article is very short. Feet love the men. We welcome everyone today with much love, as today it's the International Men's Day for us too at Magyar Yeti ZRT, which is the company that owns 444, and the men in our workplace are finally going to be greeted with warmth. Blah, blah, blah. I'll just jump over this because I don't know enough Hungarian to translate it. Dear sirs, today we salute all boys, men, fathers, and grandfathers. Today we would like to thank all of you for the caring, attention, and love that you give us every day of the year. In fact, women could not do most of the things without you. Please allow me to symbolically raise this glass of beer in your honor. Happy Men's Day. Now, the article itself is quite irrelevant. However, inside sources have pointed to me that this is essentially damage control from Feminfo. After the shitstorm that started after HVG, the censored Hufnagel's blog. Now, to find out some more stories about what happened to Hufnagel and what created the shitstorm that is happening these days in the Hungarian media, just go to the front page of voiceformen.com, and in the news section there is an article in which I documented the whole timeline of events called Hungarian Non-Feminist Publication Censored, something like that. It's called, the article. I don't have it in front of me. And by the way, this year HVG, which is probably the main news portal after Index anyway, did not mention International Men's Day at all, despite doing so consistently in the last 5 or 6 years, especially since in 2009 it became quite a relevant event in Hungary. Okay. Another one, interesting enough, coming from Armenia. Сегодня отмечается Международный мужской день. Today is International Men's Day. It's interesting that this Armenian newspaper dedicated an article to AMD. They essentially describe all its history, and incredibly accurate, better than most English language sources, and warns the readers not to confuse IMD with World's Day of Men, which was initiated by Mikhail Gorbachev and celebrated in the first Saturday of November. Back to Hungary, Haidu Press actually did a great job promoting IMD. They also printed a long article with the history of the event, and ended the article with a clip with a motivational speech by Al Pacino. Also, the most prominent at this point non-feminist publication in Hungary chastised the media for essentially ignoring the event. Férfi Hang wrote an article, "You didn't forget about IMD, didn't you?" But perhaps the most relevant, or I don't know, it just seemed more obvious to me that I should cover it. From The Independent, Max Benwell, a self-loathing mangina, published a piece at The Independent starting with, quote, "I'm no self-loathing misandrist," end quote, and then proving that he is in fact one. In his long Tumblr-like article, he tells us, amongst other things, that IMD should be gynocentric if it is to exist at all. well, he doesn't quite put it in these terms, but he says, quote, but if we are going to keep IMD, we could at least update it and make it a bit more compatible with IWD. If the organizers really want to improve gender equality, why haven't they listed one of their objectives as encouraging men not to assault or rape women? End of quote. Because we all know that all men need is more misandry bullshit from the middle-class, self-loading, left-wing pricks like these.
Yeah, and of course International Women's Day has messages like tell women not to kill their babies or something like that.
Of course. Yes,
obviously
yes.
They have that included.
Yes, indeed. Yes. No, they don't. Yeah. Okay. I see Paul is not online yet, so given this aspect, I guess we can introduce the link that just got to me 1 hour before the show when the news section was already established. Vetenskapsrådet beilar 170 miljoner till genusforskning. Coming from forskning.se, the Research Council grants 170 million Swedish kronor for gender research. That is 90 million euros, 19 something, almost 20 million euros, essentially. And it goes like this. The Research Council has recently taken the decision to grant some more funding to the gender research for this year. Among the approved projects are closer to 20 in gender research. In the project Veil, Rainbow, Flag, and Manga, if gender, sexuality, resistance, and community are relevant in a transnational time, this group alone involved 9 gender researchers from 5 different universities. Now, this is the name of the group, which is Veil, Rainbow, Flag, and Magna, if gender, sexuality, resistance, and community are relevant in a transnational time. Could they have found a longer name for their group? Anyway, Lena Martinsson, professor of gender studies of University of Gothenburg, one of the researchers in the project, was awarded 17.5 million kronor in the announcement of the humanities and social sciences. Now, anyway, the article is a bit longer. Just let's look at the projects that got some cash right now at the end of the year, and remember, this cash is only till the end of December. They'll get even more money somewhere in mid-January, according to inside sources. This is one of the projects, an evaluation of a model that reduces sexually transmitted infections and improves treatment access among those who have anal sex in Tanzania, by Annette Agard of the Lund University. What?
I don't know. That sounds like it might possibly be reasonable.
In Sweden, at a small university in Sweden, in the humanities department. Come on. Remember, this is not taking place at the medical school in Sweden. It's taking place in the gender studies. So it's not like they're actually solving anything, or they're proposing some scientifically proven solutions which aren't that complicated. I mean, just start using a bloody condom. I don't think there is a need for 1 million euros to be spent on a program like this. Just saying.
I don't know what exactly they're doing. Maybe maybe it's developing strategies that will get people to actually wear condoms or something that could, I don't know. I would have to know what they're actually doing in this project. But
yes,
I can't rule out a priori that what they're doing there is in some way sensible. It might be, probably not, but it might be.
Yeah. Also, this one, putting gender perspective on accommodation, an intersectional perspective on housing supply and urban planning with a focus on gender relations in Sweden. Urban planning, housing supply, Can't just people just let them move wherever the fuck they want and let the market build the houses? Why does it need central planning and millions upon millions of Swedish kroner taxpayers' money being paid to useless university departments to study this? I mean, really?
But Lucian, why do you hate the poor? What about more roads?
Yeah, more roads. Exactly. Okay, this one is even funnier. Climate disasters and gendered violence in Asia. Vulnerability and security in the aftermath of catastrophes in Pakistan, the Philippines, and Vietnam, by Helle Rundström, also at Lund University. Another one, conflict-related sexual violences, understanding what, when, and why. Okay, this could make sense. This one, gender and pro-poor agricultural growth, non-farm and farm linkages and village dynamics in sub-Saharan Africa, on Lund University, degree by Agnes Andersson. What?
Because we all know that sociologists make the best economists.
Yes, definitely. I mean, come on, seriously? What the hell? Oh, this one is even funnier. Inequality and insurgency in India. A disaggregated analysis of the link between gender and inequality and armed conflict. And armed conflict, not in armed conflict. On Uppsala University by Erika Fuchsberg. What? I mean, what? India doesn't have armed conflict on their soil and haven't had for quite some time. And knowing what we know about India and about the rampant false rape allegations that they're going in there, what? This one goes even further. Okay, this one is actually quite fine. In intimacies and social forms, proximity internships and identity in collective accommodation, pet relationships and dancing, by Maria Törnqvist from the Institute for Future Studies.
What? Did you just throw together like a dozen or so academic sounding words randomly or something?
No, seriously. And again, this is the official website of the Council for the Institute for Research, or the Research Council in Sweden. So basically the people who get to decide which projects get public funding or not. And no, this is a real program, at least according to this official page. Intimacies, social forms, proximity, internships, and identity in collective accommodation, pet relationships, and dancing. It's a project conducted by Maria Törnqvist from the Institute for Future Studies.
Yeah, I have no idea what they actually want to study there.
Normativities in Different Forms by Matti Eklund at the University of Uppsala. Rhetorical Feminism, Gender, Video, Art and Political Positions, 1970-2010, by Malin Hayden at the Stockholm University. Okay. Rape in Sweden, 1990-2013, a historical and intersectional perspective on the stories of rape in different genres, because that's definitely relevant. Women, War, Trauma, and Peace Building, Gendered Attitudes in Sierra Leone and Liberia, by Karen Bruneux from Lund University. School grades, cognitive performance, and educational choices, interaction between gender and social change. And it goes on like this. I mean, seriously? 20 million euros. And According to Tuklan Sverige and William Andersson from AVFM Sverige, they tell me that, well, at the same time, they pulled out all the support for research on the economy and stock markets until September 2015. So they dragged down 20 million this year, and so until the end of this year, they will have 20 million less, and next year they won't have at all, at least until the beginning of the 2015-2016 academic year. Welcome to Sweden.
I mean, sort of based on what what sort of my impression is of academia in Sweden, maybe it's actually not a bad idea that they're not studying the economy because they're just going to mess that up. So it's better that it just spend the efforts on things like the portrayal of rape in different genres of fiction or whatever. At least they're not doing any actual damage there.
You sure? Okay,
well, at least
Paul is
not direct damage.
Yeah, at least not direct damage. Okay, Paul is online, so let's go straight into a music break, and then we'll be back with Paul Elam. For the music break, let's listen to a French band from Cayenne, France, a 2007 song. The band name is Aussitôt Mort, and the name of the song is Memoria Grigia. So, Aussitôt Mort, Memoria Grigia.
Out of my
All right, we're back. We've listened to some French music, Aussitôt Morte, very nice band for those passionate about that particular genre of metal. We're back into the second part, and we're here with the overlord patriarch Paul Elam, the founder of A Voice for Men. Hello, Paul. Welcome again to AVFM Voice of Europe.
Thank you, but you did forget overlord misogynistic patriarch.
And neckbearded, yes.
Of course. Now we're getting it right.
I'm sorry for that. I'm
funny that way.
Okay, you've told me that you have some very interesting facts about International Men's Day, and definitely you have followed it even a bit more than I have, even though I've tried my best to follow coverage of it around the world. So go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, and first, thanks for having me here today, Lucian. This actually gives me, and hello to John too, this gives me an opportunity to perhaps go in a little bit more detail. I just did a 20-minute extemporaneous talk on YouTube yesterday that is up that gives a little bit of background, but I wanted a chance to fill people in on the entire background as I know it, and this is a good way to do it. But keep in mind that there are other people like Jason Thompson, who have been instrumental in International Men's Day that know even more. If you go to the A Voice for Men website, you'll find an article on International Men's Day, written by Jason Thompson, one of the founders, who's the current historian for IMD, and who was instrumental in forming their foundation for how International Men's Day was supposed to operate. My experience came from it starting years ago when, shortly after I left Men's News Daily and came and formed A Voice for Men, I was contacted first by somebody by IMD who basically wrote me an email to tell me what a terrible person I was. Why wasn't I promoting International Men's Day? I had never been invited to at that point and knew very little about it, but I still got this email that was quite hostile from somebody. And I wrote the guy back and said, why don't we try this again? Why don't you write me an invitation to help you out in any way that I can, and I'll be happy to entertain that. And I did not hear back from him. Rather bizarre exchange. I didn't think much about it until years later when I met Jason Thompson and discussed with him a lot of what had gone on with the formation of International Men's Day. So to be clear, the story that I have from very good sources on International Men's Day is that it is a men's rights initiative. That's the way it was started, was by men's rights activists, which is why one of the number 4 of the 6 pillars of International Men's Day, they inserted the term that the purpose of that day was to expose discrimination against men in social mores, in laws, in every facet of life, and to do something about it, which, of course, I am all on board for, and we have had some sort of acknowledgement of International Men's Day ever since, and encouraging people to support that. However, as time went by, I got a little bit more of a story. One of the people that was loosely affiliated with International Men's Day and a little bit more tech savvy at the time than the rest of those guys went and got himself the internationalmensday.com domain. And he took a lot of Jason Thompson's writing, promoted them as his own. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but it is in the article at avoiceformen.com, and basically took a kind of public persona of ownership of International Men's Day when it is not owned by anybody. Just for everybody's consideration, International Men's Day is a free-for-all. Anybody, anywhere in the world, in any city on this planet, is perfectly free to legally start their own International Men's Day celebration for November 19th. There is not a committee that it has to go through. There is no approval that needs to be obtained. All you need to do is want to follow the 6 pillars of International Men's Day and to start an event to that effect. Well, despite all the dirty dealings and the shenanigans going on with domain names, International Men's Day grew and is growing still into quite a phenomenon. It's now spread worldwide. There's many, many celebrations across the world on November the 19th. It is starting to get media attention, and it's turned into quite a success, which of course has attracted feminist ideologues who want to co-opt it, who want to make it their own. I was in contact recently with Men's Rights Northern Ireland, a very, very red pill group. These guys are very much pro men's rights. They're very much respectful of the 6 pillars of International Men's Day. And they believe that International Men's Day celebrations should focus a great deal on the issues that are faced by men and boys in the discrimination that Pillar 4 describes. They set up a deal with the Belfast Northern Ireland City Council, along with several other government agencies, that they were to commence International Men's Day this year with a speech from me, done on video, and presented to them as a part of their opening ceremonies. We had planned this for weeks now. We're ready to do it. And then all of a sudden, Sinn Féin, a political entity in Northern Ireland, formerly associated, and I guess still partly associated with the IRA, put in a resolution to the Belfast City Council that the Belfast City Council should adopt the United Nations Women's Organization, He for She, as a part of International Men's Day. Now, if your listeners, if the 4 or 5 listeners that you have that have not heard of He for She, will explain it to them. He for She is a feminist, typical feminist propagandist program to encourage men to abandon looking at their own issues, to quit caring about themselves, and care for what affects and bothers women. I know that you're deeply shocked that a feminist would take this perspective, but indeed they have. And we don't know if Belfast City Council adopted that yet. I'm still trying to find out. But what did happen was shortly after this feminist group, under the guise of being part of Sinn Féin, adopted that resolution and passed it to the Belfast City Council. I and AVFM and Men's Rights Northern Ireland were summarily requested not to attend, and my presentation was canceled. The presentation of the leading advocacy group in the world that addresses the fourth pillar of what International Men's Day is supposed to be about, we're told your presence is no longer required, and I was not allowed to give a presentation to open the ceremonies for that day. While that was disappointing, it is also, I think, a good piece of writing on the wall for the work that's cut out ahead of us. International Men's Day is the first effort of its kind that has reached a truly organized worldwide status as an entity that is furthering the issues of men. And now at this point, and we also saw somebody recently in the Washington Post, again, I will be writing an article on this later today. You can have the guy's name in the video that I did do about International Men's Day. I linked to that article. So if you find that on my YouTube channel and go into the low bar, you'll find a link to a Washington Post article by an individual who claims to be a part of the Save Indian Family Foundation. Save Indian Family is a men's rights group that is well established, that is non-feminist, that has been fighting discrimination against men in family courts and in particular in incidents of rape accusation in India for some years now, and they have attained some level of prominence there. Well, the individual who wrote the article for the Washington Post claimed to be a member of the Save Indian Family Foundation, and
I think he's not.
I talked to members. We've had members of that organization, including one of the founders, Uma Chawla, on A Voice for Men for years. I talked to another individual who is a member of that organization, and to quote as close as I can verbatim to his reaction, he said, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And he didn't know anybody that knew who he was. So I'm going to do an article today challenging the Washington Post to come out with, wait a minute. And his article, by the way, was titled that International Men's Day is a great day to promote feminist causes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Again, another attempt to step in and co-opt and take over and make International Men's Day, since they can't stop it from happening. Of course, now they want to take over it like they did much of the atheist skeptic community, like they're attempting to do with the gaming community right now, like they're trying to do and succeeded in most cases with co-opting any effort whatsoever to promote something that's not about them. So
yes, and I'm pretty sure Jon will disagree, but it's pretty hard not to think that it is at least appearing to be a coordinated effort, because similar attempts, similar lines of reasoning were published in Le Figaro in France, in The Guardian. Michael Kimmel published something. A middle-class, self-loathing left-wing mangina published something even more egregious in The Independent. I mean, it's not just one piece somewhere in the Washington Post. In various outlets, apparently independent of each other, but given how many evidence of media collusion has been surfacing lately, I'm not so sure about that independent of each other. But anyway.
Well, let's look at it this way, Lucien, and I would certainly think that it being coincidence is absolutely out of the question. If you look at what happened after the first International Conference for Men's Issues, we had, I think, something like 18 different media sources all publish hit pieces on the conference, all using the same exact talking points on the same day. Across the world. That's not a coincidence. That is a conspiracy. And I'll use the word, and people can think I have a tinfoil hat if they want to, but this is collusion by a lot of people to achieve a goal. You're right. I use the Washington Post as an example because it happened to be written by a man of Indian descent who claimed to be part of the Save Indian Family Foundation. But there were other articles like Michael Kimmel's, Kimmel's across the board, saying essentially the same thing on the same day, and it came right on the heels of a political group as large as Sinn Féin promoting he for she to the Belfast City Council. I can't believe that this is a coincidence. It's impossible for me to think that. When things happen organically, I know that certain trends start following, and those are part of just sort of the natural organic move of society and the way it views things, and word passes among journalists. So over a period of time, we're going to see articles leaning a certain way, as we have with the anti-MHRM message. But when they all come out at the same time, around the same event, using the same language, by the same crew, or generally the same crew of ideologues. This has been planned. And what I wanted to talk about today is that we need a plan to counteract that. We can't let this go down within a fight. They may win because, they're outfunded. They've outfunded us. They are much larger in numbers. They have the power of the media behind them. But we also have developed a few tools of our own. And I am pledging AVFM support henceforth on every International Men's Day to expose the fraudulent activity, to discredit that movement if it becomes necessary, if they allow it to be taken over by feminist ideologues, and for International Men's Day to become just another International Vagina Day. I'm not going to let that happen without a fight. I may lose, but I'm going to fight.
Yeah, I guess my question is, you said that organization Champagne, did I get that correctly? Champagne is loosely associated with the IRA. Now, I'm just asking, why would someone believing in, at least partially in IRA ideals, would want to have anything to do with what we're doing? Anything at all?
I know the answer to that, I believe, Lucian. Unfortunately, less. Sinn Féin is the official political branch of the Irish Republican Army, seeking independence from Great Britain. And they're doing it, I believe, for the same reasons that everybody else takes up corrupt feminist causes. Because painting yourself as being supportive of poor, oppressed women, where I'm sure there are some somewhere. I don't know any in my country, but I'm sure somewhere there's a poor, oppressed woman somewhere. Painting yourself as the savior to that group of people is hugely appealing to the human psyche, because all of us, most of us, in one way or another, are wired to feel good about protecting women. Men die to protect women. They're willing to die to protect women they don't even know. Men were willing to go fight in World War I, to go into that horrific meat grinder out of Great Britain simply because a woman handed them a white feather on the street, implying that they were a coward if they didn't. This is how powerful this drive is. And if Sinn Féin can paint itself as somebody that advocates for the right of women, it will gain them political strength through the United Nations. It will gain them popularity and appeal throughout the world, because many people whose first exposure to Sinn Féin will be, well, hey, they're trying to help women. And that's as far as most people will use their brains on the matter. They'll look at it and say, oh, they're trying to help women, they must be good, story over, and they won't listen to anything else. It's actually, politically speaking, a pretty damn smart move on their part to do that. But I agree with you. It would seem to have absolutely nothing with Sinn Féin's actual political goals. But as a PR tool, it's a great thing.
I don't really know if it's really a good move strategically for them, because basically almost every political party is already quite feminist in the UK, as in almost all Western countries. So saying that we're the party that is in favor of feminism, that doesn't really have any sort of unique appeal to it. It's just you're another of those. So I don't know if it really is a good strategy on Sinn Féin.
True story, but wouldn't that make them appear less extremist?
Yes, and more normalized.
That is a good point.
It would make them appear to be more in the normal political mainstream if they take up that cause. And they are, they're not. Sinn Féin is wildly popular with Northern Irish separatists. but it is not popular with a lot of the Irish people. And sitting on the fence, looking at Sinn Féin from the outside, that may very well successfully tip people over in their favor.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Yes. So, I guess the next question is, how do we fight it? Other than what we have been doing for the last, for 5 years now.
Well, it will take a focus on this to fight it. I mean, and it's going to be a somewhat nasty and somewhat unpopular fashion. I mean, the brilliance of co-opting International Men's Day is that it puts real men's rights activists in a position that we have to attack a men's initiative with a reputation of actually caring about men in order to get the truth out. And that's exactly what the retaliation is going to be. They're going to say, look what AVFM's doing. They're attacking their own. They're just attacking everybody. We will have to be somewhat meticulous about how we paint the message. It will have to be one ultimately of supporting an International Men's Day. But in that video, and I plan to doing more outreach, I am going to reach out to International Men's Day committees throughout the world, and we know they are out there. There are people who have been involved with IMD for years now that are also very concerned. And I want to partner with those people, and actually not so much partner with them as be of service to them, so that they can develop somewhat of what we call here in America a good housekeeping seal, which is a seal of approval that says that this is an IMD group that is actually following the 6 pillars of IMD, and making it known that there are other IMD groups, the ones who will not have that seal of approval, that are not true IMD organizations. They are organizations that have the sole purpose of promoting feminist causes. We need to hammer that message across the board, starting with campaigns that begin about 3 months, at least by September, early September, starting out identifying who is having an International Men's Day that cares about the discrimination that are faced by men, that has activities and speeches and ceremonies that address these issues, and which ones are going to be coming out saying that the best thing for men in the world is to do more for women. And I believe we'll be able to paint, as history develops, very stark differences between those types of IMD groups. And hopefully the idea is to choke the fake IMD groups, the feminist IDM groups, off from the rest of the IMD groups, to choke them off and let them die.
Interesting. And as Paul is talking about choking them off and letting them die, and then then the rain behind. that puts a little bit of a grim image. Now, sorry for putting it in these terms, Paul, but I think you are already going from the premises that the battle has already been lost, which I don't think it is the case yet. I mean, it might have already been lost in Northern Ireland, but everywhere else?
Yeah,
well,
also,
go ahead.
I don't really think that these attacks on IMD are really all that well thought out. Like, for example, the article by the Indian writer you mentioned before. It is sort of very, very pro-feminist in its tone, but it also actually points out several areas where men are disadvantaged, and criticizes that. And so even though they have this sort of feminist outlook, many of these attacks, because it is sort of still International Men's Day, they still sort of feel obligated to at least pay lip service to the idea that men have problems too, which is what you usually don't see in the typical feminist propaganda, and sort of having any
That's
sort of
called subversion, essentially.
yeah, and having any sort of the sort of vicious attacks that usually come out from feminism is not really something you can do on International Men's Day, because it just really would be in poor taste when you're sort of openly expressing the misandry on International Men's Day, even for feminists that doesn't make them look good.
Well, it didn't prevent the guy from Independent to do exactly that. I mean, we've read in the first hour of the show.
Well, let me say first that I'm not proceeding for the assumption that the battle is lost. What I am insinuating here, I think pretty clearly, is that they did get the jump on us, that they got an early start, that they've orchestrated things, that all these articles have come out, and that their battle started before we knew there was a war. That doesn't mean that I've given up hope by any means, or I wouldn't be fighting. What John just pointed out was quite true. They have limitations in how they can fight this. They can't just come out and attack International Men's Day as a group of misogynists. They have to, by the nature of the animal, acknowledge some of the issues. But if you read that Washington Post article, you see all the key talking points are there. Destroy patriarchy, male privilege, all these things. And the subtle innuendo that what on earth could we have why should men have a day? That message is there. And this is how you co-opt things. You share enough of the same principles, at least in words, and you start injecting the ideology that will ultimately destroy whatever decent things they said. The first attempt is to get control of it, to get feminists in there. When feminists get in, they have a very nifty way of using pussy power to start running things. And that's what I see happening here. I think that there is a great potential here, even if IMD had to reshape itself into a smaller group to begin with, to have and to possibly even gather a group of IMD celebrants that will place a seventh pillar into the IMD platform, which is it is a non-feminist event. I think that is where the war can be waged with them. And I think that while it's not totally winnable, we can't convince every organization, particularly, let's say that IMD Belfast has already been co-opted, and now there are feminists in there that are going to, take this agenda and make International Men's Day about women, which is exactly what they want to do. That could be, if they're at that stage, a lost cause. But they can be isolated from a lot of the other groups in terms of their public image. And what AVFM is particularly good at is looking at their activities, looking at what they're doing, and exposing it to the very community that will follow matters that are about International Men's Day, because there are a lot of good men that are involved in this. And I do believe that there are a lot of them, particularly from the people that I've talked to that were part of the founding of IMD and people that are involved now that do not want feminist influence in that movement. So we do have soldiers on the ground already there, and we have the vehicles by which we can transmit that message and that we can gather an organized reaction to this attempt to take over this movement and make it about feminist causes.
Yeah, definitely a seventh pillar to explicitly mention that this is a non-feminist event. That would be so much win. Okay, we'll continue the talk after another music break. Let's listen to the classical rock band from Sweden, Slowborn, courtesy of Joachim Ramstedt of AVFM Sverige. So, Slowborn, Devil in My Blood.
My pocket, line a highway up ahead, yellow flowers on the prairie rockets, the sun glows in cherry red. I've been driving since 5 p.m. Haven't been asleep all night. Gotta cover ground, have to move around. Well, the moon is my guiding light, guiding light. The road keeps twisting and turning. Gotta see what lies up ahead, like a fever that keeps on burning. I won't stop until I'm dead, and I wonder if I'll find a way home. I can rest inside your grace, or will I always roam in this world alone, forever haunted by the chase? Yeah, yeah, got the sound of angels in my heart. Sometimes it hits me like a mighty flood. Yeah, guess I've been running right from the start. I got the devil in my blood, in my blood. Past the highway lights, I am just a dog astray, searching for an exit sign. And though I long for your warm embrace, I just can't seem to slow down. Gotta keep the pace, I can't lose the race. I gotta move, move. Got the sound of angels in my heart. Sometimes it hits me like a mighty flood. Yeah, yeah. Guess I've been running right from the start. I got the devil in my blood, in my blood, in my blood. Got the devil, devil in my blood. Yeah, got the devil. I got the devil. Got the devil.
Okay, we're back. We've listened to Slowburn, Devil in My Blood, very nice classical rock band from Sweden. You should Google them and show a bit of support to them. We're into the closing thoughts portion of the show. We're here with Paul Elam, and we're talking about International Men's Day. And we were at the point of discussing ways to counteract it. Paul mentioned that next year we probably should begin fishing out for subverters 3 months ahead. Now, Paul, you're adding a bit more pressure. We'll be busy with the conference at that moment.
That's okay. We like pressure. Apparently, we love pressure. Just from what we do for a living around here. You guys, too, are no exception to that. But it doesn't matter. We'll be very, very deeply buried in the conference, but we also have the resources now with different writers. We can assign people. We have the assistance of Jason Thompson, who can reach out to many other members of IMD, who can write articles, who can write exposés, who can bring us first-hand accounts of how things are changing and what's happening. And we can get those all over AVFM, our YouTube platform, AVFM Radio. I'm sure that AVFM Europe will be on top of that because this will involve a lot of European cities. There's not going to be a slowdown at this at all. It's too important. We have to hit this hard. If we want an International Men's Day that has an investment in what's happening to men and boys, we're going to have to fight for it, just like everything else.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely a fight worth fighting, because International Men's Day is something that is actually acknowledged by the actual mainstream media, and it's not something that is fringe, that is immediately associated with being misogynistic or something like that. So it is an important opportunity to get our message out to a much wider audience, and to get in many new people, and to inform them about these issues, which is just something that they in the regular course of the year they never hear about these issues, if they're not already following the men's movement.
That is a real good point, John. It also brings up a potential challenge that we're going to face, depending on the degree of success that we have in turning this around. If we are able, and we will to some extent, I know there's going to be some IMD groups that will probably adopt the seventh pillar, that will probably adopt a seal of approval. And of course, then the mainstream media will have to reverse itself on its position of being even somewhat neutral about this. Of course, I don't know how neutral they are. It is the mainstream media that is allowing people like Michael Kimmel and others to come in and talk about what a great feminist idea this is, which is just absolute bullshit. But once we've established a foothold in that with a group of IMD participants that want this to be about men's issues, then I do think we will see the media attack it as a misogynistic event. I think that's all but guaranteed.
Yes, definitely. But it's not going to be as easy as it is otherwise to paint this as being misogynistic, because there is an International Women's Day, and at least they have to at least profess to be in favor of equality. So they can't very well argue that, yes, it's important to have an International Women's Day, but no day for men. So they do somewhat face an uphill battle here. They're basically fighting us on our home ground.
Yep.
Yes, there is that. And there's also the fact that 1 year from now, the mainstream media will look even slightly more different than it does now, just like it looks now slightly more different than it looked in 2013. I mean, come on. Having our editor-in-chief published on Huffington Post UK in 2013, that would have been totally impossible.
He was on the page of it, and he was also published in the American Huffington Post.
Yes, but I was mentioning Huffington Post UK because it's the branch of Huffington Post that I personally had a conflict with it. You remember I wrote an open letter to their editor-in-chief because they were publishing the violent thug Ina Shevchenko of Femen. So, that is the publication that was publishing openly misandrist pieces and violent thugs, violent feminist thugs and things of that nature just 16, 18 months ago.
Yep.
So I'm thinking that 1 year from now, or better said, 7, 8 months from now, probably the media will look even a little bit more different than it does now, and which pretty much adds to Jon Gunnarson's point that it would be quite difficult for the media to turn around and say, oh well, ignored what we said for the last 5 years. Now we are saying that this is. They could do it, but it's quite risky to do it market-wise.
The media is very good at reversing themselves without bothering to tell anybody they've reversed themselves. They just sort of do it. But also, and you're right, that is a very important part of the equation, Lucien, because the fact of the matter is the media is changing. It is absolutely changing, and it's changing at least in part because of the work that AVFM has done. We have now at Huffington Post, I forget the guy's first name, his last name is Cook. He is writing regular articles now savaging feminism. They're articles that could be written at A Voice for Men, and they're running right there on Huffington Post. So they're reading the writing on the wall. The fact that Mashable approached me to represent men's rights activists without putting it in scare quotes, and allowed me to debate a feminist where it was perfect. The feminist showed what an idiot he was, and we got to make our points, and they allowed them to stand. They didn't cut my copy down to mean something other than what it was, and there was no editorial slant pointing a finger at me as some sort of lunatic. Mashable gets somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million visits a day. Things are changing, and you're right. By the time we have the next International Men's Day, this may become an honest topic of debate among competing readers, and I think we will get there, and probably by then.
Yeah, because go ahead.
Okay. Also, like if you look at the comment sections of articles that are talking about feminism or gender issues or men's rights or whatever have you, usually you will find that the majority of commenters are basically more or less on our side, and they're just fed up with feminism. They're maybe not men's rights activists, but at least they know they're fed up with feminism. And the media, of course, they're not stupid. They realize this, and I think this is the main reason why we've seen this sort of sea change take place in the last 2 years or so. And it's quite funny that in the German media there's now a sort of a discussion among the elite media about just completely removing comment sections from online articles because the discussions are so toxic and all the people have wrong opinions and so on. They're really running scared because the sort of still popular elite opinion, which is feminism, is just no longer acceptable to most people in the broader population.
And that's a brilliant move for us too, John. If they are forced, and I've said this a long time ago, that one of the tactics that mainstream media outlets would use would be eventually to just remove comments, because it doesn't look good for them when they run a piece of misandric garbage and then 200 commenters come in behind them and tell them how crazy they are to run that stuff. So if they can't change their narrative to reflect a more balanced perspective and to give both points of view and allow them to be vetted in the comments, they have to kill the comments. And when they kill the comments, they start killing page views. Every time somebody posts a comment, that's a page view. And that adds up to a lot. That adds up to sometimes 20, 30% of the traffic an article will get. People don't much like places where they can't express their opinion anymore. So forcing them to close their comments is also forcing them to curtail their own relevance. This is I welcome that. I love it when I see HuffPo or some other organization run an article and then after like 8 comments, they close them because they see what's coming. And I've seen a lot of that lately too. We're going to win this battle, and people are going to come to where they can express their view. And that's going to be on more competitive sites that are trying to establish a larger market. The ones that are already up there and have the hubris that comes with that, those are the guys that are going to say, well, we don't have to listen to these stupid readers express their opinion. We'll just close the comments. That's going to hurt them deeply in the long run.
Well, to be fair, the HuffPo have gone to a more liberal, if I am allowed to use that, way of dealing with comments. Essentially install the Facebook plugin, and now everyone can say whatever the fuck they want, which is totally different than what it used to be when they had their own commenting system. You needed to have an account on Huffington Post itself, and usually everything that was even remotely non-feminist used to be deleted for the most part, unless the moderator was busy.
Give you another example, and this will be the first place I announce it, to let everybody know, and we have not made a decision to do this, but we are discussing it. You know, typically when a website wants to have something like AdSense on their site, they apply to Google, Google reviews the site and makes a decision yes or no, correct?
Yes.
Guess who approached me personally? Google.
Nice. I think I know why, but I'll keep my mouth shut about that.
No, don't keep your mouth shut. There should be a sort of open discussion, because the process of going through whether or not we engage in any sort of partnership with Google is going to be an open discussion within our community.
Well, I think I know why. Is essentially because I took care to have some ads on some of the affiliates, and I ran into big troubles to have that going on, especially on the Swedish affiliate. And the reason I eventually pulled it off and have some ads posted, even though not to the extent that I wanted to, is because I essentially used some of my connections that I had within there, and essentially exerted pressure on Google itself to admit it, because, you know, AVFM Sweden was rejected twice and accepted the third time, for instance. So that's why I think I know why they approached you now.
Well, and that's good. So whatever you did, that's fantastic. I'm glad it helped, but it is a very unusual move that Google sends account representatives to contact the heads of websites to say, will you please sign on for this? We consider that a very positive sign. Whether we do it or not is going to be another question. We're going to get some community feedback. We're going to discuss this a lot among management. But the fact of the matter is that in a place where we used to not bother applying because we figured they would turn us down, the account executive I talked to had thoroughly examined the site, did not care about the content, and wanted us to partner with that. That is a change that's huge.
It is.
So all this, the International Men's Day, what's happening in the mainstream media in general in terms of their reaction to men's rights advocates is changing. It's changing very rapidly, as sometimes happens. You go and go and go, and then you reach a tipping point, and the next thing you know, it's like a landslide. I believe we could be seeing the beginning of the landslide, and when it happens, feminism will be over as they ever have known it before. In terms of, they think it's bad that only 20% of people identify as feminists. Try 2% before it's over.
I'm more of James Huff's school of thought. It will probably take 2 more years, probably even more, until that kind of landslide will come, and will probably, and this is only my opinion, will probably be aided by the increasing degree of infighting within our philosophical opponents.
Yep. I think James is absolutely correct about that. I'm guessing myself a couple of years max, and I think we're going to see feminism actually become a dirty word, culturally speaking. And that can only be a good thing.
Well, Jon, what do you think? I mean, you have been for a while a proponent of this thing, that of having feminism a dirty word. Do you think it's possible in 2 years? Or 3?
I don't know about 2 years, but I do think that we are already starting to see this happen. This feminism is already sort of a dirty word among many people. As I said before, it's very popular with the elites, not really popular at all with the population at large. The problem is still that people believe that, most people believe that, feminism isn't really necessary anymore here in the West today, but it actually was very beneficial in the past, and it's very beneficial in, third world countries in the Middle East and so on. And I think this is one of the very important things that we need to tackle, and we need to inform people about, so that we can eliminate some of these myths which are still standing in our way of basically making feminism a dirty word. And I think it's just people being ignorant about this, and I think if we can get this message out, that would bring us a long step along the way.
Yeah, I also think that this will probably be the next philosophical fight, convincing the general public that feminism in third world generally tends to be quite toxic and far from necessary. If you remember, we've read a piece from AVFM en Español about how essentially feminist ideologues tried to do various projects in the third world, granting microloans only to women and things of that nature, and it eventually turned out to be toxic and an utter failure. And examples like these should be brought even more to the public, just like examples put forth by Ali Mehrashpand of AVFM Farsi. That will probably be the next difficult task once feminism becomes a dirty word in Europe and North America.
And we do have a ways to go. Let me close this out. I know we're running out of time with a short story. Just a very few months ago, my partner and I were shopping at a grocery store, part of a big chain here in the United States. And the clerk asked me if I wanted to donate $1 to business funds supporting women in business. And I asked him, what about men? And because I said, I don't donate to bigoted causes and causes that exclude. And he said, well, they do give some money to men, but the men tend not to repay the loans. And this is from a clerk at a grocery store. Needless to say that it didn't get my dollar, but we do have a long way to go until I want to see that thing removed from the stand until it's inclusive.
Interesting. Yeah, that was pretty much the argument made by the UN in that article that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Yes, we're running out of time, so I guess that will be pretty much the closing of tonight's episode. I'm looking forward to having Paul again at this show. Jon, any closing thoughts?
I'm looking forward to International Men's Day next year, which will be better than this year, and then probably the year after that will be even better. And maybe in 10 years, International Men's Day, then we can finally look back on feminism having become a dirty word, at least to a limited extent. And I do think this is a realistic goal, but we do have to keep hammering home the message, and especially I think focusing on looking at feminism outside of the present day Western world.
Absolutely right.
All right, then with that being said, thanks a lot, Paul, for coming to our show. Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone.
This has been a production of A Voice for Man. Lucian Wilson and his guests, thank you for listening to The Voice of Europe. A Voice for Men radio is not corporate media and everything runs on donations. So please consider visiting avoiceformen.com and make a donation. We would also like to thank the artists De Primatera, Mbezna, Cristian Buica, the Iranian band Arsames, the DDG Project, and all the other artists that offered us their songs to use under Creative Commons license. Special thanks go to www.pacdv.com/sounds for putting the sounds of the jingles at our disposal. We would also want to remind the listeners to take the red pill. Thank you for listening to us and have a great evening. Ați ascultat Vocea Europei.